For a long time, many men were led to believe that stronger erections are only about age or luck, as if your body either has it or it doesn't, and once things change, there's nothing you can do. But the science keeps pointing to something more empowering and more practical. Erections are deeply connected to vascular health. They depend on how well your blood vessels relax, how well blood flows, how calm your nervous system is, and how much inflammation your body is carrying day to day. So today, I want to share 5 foods that can naturally support erections in a science-backed way. Not as magic, not as instant fixes, as real, nutritional tools that improve the foundation, circulation, nitric oxide availability, endothelial function, and overall cardiovascular support. And I want to do it in a way that feels realistic. Because nobody wants a list of superfoods that you'll eat once and forget. What actually works is repetition, small habits, and understanding what each food is doing inside your body. Before we begin, I want to name the problem in a way that feels honest. A lot of men reach a point where they notice changes that are subtle at first. Maybe it takes longer to respond. Maybe firmness is less predictable. Maybe confidence drops, not because you're weak, but because uncertainty creeps in. Some men also notice fatigue, heavier stress, a bigger waistline than they expected, and sleep that doesn't fully restore them. Those things matter because erections are not an isolated event. They're a signal. They reflect circulation, hormones, mood, and the nervous system all working together. And here's the key idea I want you to hold on to through this entire video. If erections depend on blood flow, then anything that improves blood vessel health can support erectile quality. That's why the same habits that protect your heart often support your erections too. And food is one of the most direct ways to influence that system. Now I'm going to walk you through 5 foods, one by one, with what they are, how they work, and what kind of benefit you can realistically expect over time. I'll also share simple ways to use them so they become part of your routine instead of a temporary experiment. The first food is beets, especially beetroot and beet juice. Beets are famous for one reason that actually matters for erections: dietary nitrates. Your body can convert these nitrates into nitric oxide, a molecule that helps blood vessels relax and widen. When blood vessels relax, blood flow improves. And when blood flow improves, erections tend to become easier, more stable, and more responsive. What I like about beets is that the mechanism makes sense and it's well studied in cardiovascular research. Nitric oxide is a central player in vascular function. And if you've ever heard of the endothelium, that thin lining inside your blood vessels, that's where a lot of the magic happens. Healthy endothelium means better vessel flexibility. Stiff, inflamed endothelium means the opposite. Now, a very practical note. Nitric oxide production from dietary nitrates depends partly on your oral microbiome. In simple terms, the bacteria in your mouth help kickstart the conversion process. That's why some research discussions mention that antiseptic mouthwash right before nitrate-rich foods can reduce the effect. I'm not telling you to stop basic hygiene. I'm just highlighting that the body's systems are connected in surprising ways. So how do you actually use beets without making your life complicated? The easiest options are roasted beets in salads, shredded raw beets mixed into meals, or a small glass of beet juice a few times per week. Some people prefer blending cooked beets into a smoothie with berries and yogurt. The point is consistency, not perfection. The second food is leafy greens, especially arugula, spinach, kale, and Swiss chard. Leafy greens support erections for a similar reason to beets, but with an important advantage. They bring a broader nutritional package. Many leafy greens are also rich in nitrates, and they deliver potassium, magnesium, and antioxidants that support blood pressure control and vessel function. And why does that matter for erections? Because high blood pressure and poor vessel flexibility are 2 of the most common silent drivers of erectile changes, even in men who look healthy on the outside. Many men think they need a direct sexual solution, but the body is asking for a cardiovascular solution. Leafy greens are one of the simplest ways to provide that. Here's a daily life example that comes up often. A man hits his 40s or 50s and starts working longer hours. He sits more. He sleeps less. His meals become more processed. He may not feel sick, but his blood pressure slowly creeps up and inflammation rises. Then erections become less reliable. He assumes it's age, but very often it's lifestyle catching up quietly. Leafy greens are not glamorous, but they are powerful because they work upstream. They help create a better internal environment for blood flow. One simple strategy is to build a default meal pattern, a big handful of grains with lunch or dinner, even if it's just thrown into a bowl with olive oil and lemon, or mixed into eggs, or added to a soup. If you do that most days, you're not taking something. You're changing your baseline. The third food is pomegranate, especially pomegranate juice with no added sugar, or the fresh seeds. Pomegranate is interesting because it's strongly associated with antioxidant activity, and oxidative stress is one of the major enemies of nitric oxide. Here's the simple idea. Nitric oxide helps blood vessels relax. Oxidative stress can reduce nitric oxide availability and damage endothelial function over time. Antioxidant-rich foods can support vascular health by reducing that oxidative burden and supporting a healthier vessel lining. There has also been a clinical trial exploring pomegranate juice and erections, which is part of why pomegranate appears so often in conversations about this topic. Now, I want to be careful here. Nutrition research is rarely a perfect yes or no. But pomegranate is one of the foods where the story aligns. Vascular benefits, antioxidant support, and a plausible pathway connected to erectile function. If you want to use it practically, you don't need huge quantities. A small glass of unsweetened pomegranate juice a few times per week, or sprinkling pomegranate seeds over yogurt or salads, is enough to make it a habit. If you're watching sugar intake, this is where portion matters. You're using it as a tool, not as a dessert replacement. And there's something else pomegranate does that I find important for men's confidence. It introduces a ritual. When a man starts building a routine that says, "I'm taking care of my circulation," his mindset shifts. Confidence is not only psychological, but the psychological part matters. Anxiety and performance pressure can tighten the nervous system and reduce responsiveness. Creating a calm, consistent health ritual helps many men get out of that mental spiral. The fourth food is pistachios. Nuts in general are helpful for vascular health, but pistachios have a specific study behind them in the context of erectile function, which is why they've earned a spot in a science-backed conversation. Pistachios provide healthy fats and are often discussed in relation to lipid profiles and vascular support. And when your lipid profile improves and your vessels are healthier, erections can improve too. Now, nuts can be tricky because they're calorie-dense. That doesn't make them bad. It just means they work best as a measured habit. A small handful of pistachios as a snack or added to meals is enough. The biggest mistake I see is when someone eats half a bag while distracted and then decides nuts don't work. The goal is not to overwhelm your calorie intake. The goal is to use nuts as a replacement for ultra-processed snacks that harm vessel health. I also want to highlight something subtle. Many men look for foods that increase testosterone. But for erectile quality, vascular health is often the bigger lever. Hormones matter, yes, but blood flow and endothelial function often show results earlier and more reliably than chasing hormone hacks. Pistachios are a good example of a food that supports the foundation instead of promising a shortcut. The fifth food is fatty fish, like salmon, sardines, and mackerel. Fatty fish are rich in omega-3 fatty acids, and omega-3s are strongly associated with cardiovascular benefits. They support healthier blood vessels, reduce inflammation, and can improve endothelial function. Again, notice the pattern. We keep coming back to the same root: blood vessel health. Inflammation is one of the most underappreciated factors in erectile changes. Low-grade chronic inflammation can stiffen vessels over time, impair nitric oxide signaling, and reduce the body's ability to respond quickly. Omega-3-rich fish helps shift that inflammatory balance, especially when it replaces processed meats and fried foods. If you don't love fish, the key is to find the least resistance option. Canned sardines on toast with lemon. Salmon baked with herbs. A fish taco bowl with lots of greens. The idea is 2 to 3 servings per week, not an extreme diet change. And if you're someone who already has cardiovascular risk factors, Fatty fish becomes even more valuable because it supports the same systems your doctor would want you to protect anyway. Now that you've heard the 5 foods, I want to address a very common misunderstanding. Some men will try one of these foods for a few days, notice nothing, and assume the entire idea is fake. But erections are a vascular event, and vascular improvements tend to be gradual. What you're really building is better endothelial function, improved blood pressure patterns, and a calmer inflammatory environment. That's not a 2-day transformation. It's a steady upgrade. To make this feel real, let me give you a simple way to combine these foods into a routine without turning your life into a nutrition project. Imagine a typical week where you keep it basic. 2 or 3 times you include fatty fish in dinner. Most days you include a big handful of leafy greens somewhere, even if it's just a quick salad or greens mixed into a warm dish. A few times per week you add beets, maybe as roasted cubes in a salad or a small amount of beet juice. A few times you use pomegranate in a controlled portion, like seeds on yogurt or a small glass of unsweetened juice. And you keep pistachios as your default snack instead of cookies or chips. That pattern is not extreme. And it aligns with what we know about heart-healthy eating patterns like the Mediterranean approach, which repeatedly shows benefits for vascular health. When you do this, erections are not the only thing that can improve. Many men also notice better energy, better mood stability, and better sleep over time, because blood sugar spikes and inflammation often soften when you eat this way. Now I want to talk about something that doesn't get said enough. If you're under constant stress, your body may be chemically blocking the very benefits you're trying to create. Stress pushes the nervous system into a state where blood flow prioritizes survival, not intimacy. That doesn't mean it's in your head. It means your physiology is responding to chronic tension. So when you add these foods, don't forget the simplest amplifier of all: daily movement, better sleep, and less sitting. Food is powerful, but it works best when the rest of your life supports circulation too. Let me share a few short stories that capture how this plays out. I remember a man in his early 50s who felt embarrassed that he was losing consistency. He didn't want to talk about it. So he did what many men do. He tried quick fixes in silence. Nothing changed. When he finally shifted to a vascular support plan, the first thing he noticed wasn't even erectile. It was that his afternoon fatigue improved and he stopped waking up as much at night. He started eating greens daily, added salmon twice a week, and used pistachios instead of sweet snacks. A month later, he told me something that stuck with me. His confidence improved because his body felt more predictable again. That predictability is a huge part of well-being. I also think of a man in his 40s who was already active but lived on caffeine and fast meals. He had good muscle tone, so he assumed he was healthy. But erections were inconsistent. He started adding beets and leafy greens almost every day, and he reduced processed foods. What changed first was his blood pressure reading at home, which surprised him. Then his responsiveness improved, not because of a dramatic moment, but because his body stopped working against him. And then there's the story of the man who did everything right except one thing: sleep. He ate well, he exercised, he took care of himself, but he slept 5 hours a night and thought it was normal. His erections were unpredictable, and he blamed age. Once he started sleeping 7 hours consistently, it was like the other habits finally had room to work. That's how integrated this system is. Nutrition, blood flow, stress, and sleep all meet in the same place. Now I want to be clear about safety, because natural doesn't mean no boundaries. If you have diabetes, cardiovascular disease, are taking blood pressure medications, or use nitrate medications, you should always be cautious about making big changes without guidance. And if erectile changes are sudden, severe, or accompanied by chest pain, shortness of breath, or new urinary symptoms, that's not a food conversation anymore. That's a medical evaluation conversation. Erections can be an early warning sign of vascular disease, and it's wise to treat that as useful information, not as shame. But if what you're experiencing is the more common pattern, gradual changes over time, then this is where food can be a quiet, steady ally. I want to add one more layer that most people miss. These foods don't work like isolated pills. They work best as part of a pattern that reduces the foods that harm vessel health. So if you add beets and pomegranate, but you keep high amounts of processed meats, high sugar intake, heavy alcohol use, and late night overeating, the benefit gets muted. It's not because the foods failed. It's because you're trying to row forward while another habit is pulling backward. So here's the mindset I recommend. Don't chase the perfect diet. Choose one small change you can repeat. If you're starting from zero, begin with leafy greens daily because they are the simplest foundation habit. Then add fatty fish twice per week. Then choose one of the others as your personal preference. The body responds to consistency more than intensity. Now, let me give you one final, powerful summary in a single sentence. The most reliable way to naturally support erections is to feed and protect your blood vessels because your circulation is the engine behind erectile quality. And I want you to hear the hope inside that. If circulation can improve, then your response can improve. If inflammation can calm down, then your body can become more predictable. If your nervous system can relax, then confidence can return. None of that is reserved for the young. It's available to men who decide to rebuild the foundation, one habit at a time. If you want, you can treat this as a 21-day experiment. Pick 2 of the foods from today and make them part of your week in a realistic way. Notice your energy, your sleep, your mood, and your confidence. Those are often the early signs that your circulation is improving, even before you notice anything else. And if this video helped you see erections through a calmer, more science-based lens, I invite you to share your experience in the comments in a respectful way. A lot of men are carrying these questions alone, and you never know who your words might help. If you want more content on longevity, well-being, and confidence in maturity, you can subscribe and stay close. Your body is not done. With the right inputs, it can respond, adapt, and become stronger again. Sources you can use in your video description: PubMed 11, https://pubmed.ncbi.nlm.nih.gov/1756875/UTM_source=ChatGPT.com. Efficacy and safety of pomegranate juice on improvement.